What's up guys, hope everyone is doing well. In this video I'm going to be going over some updates for XYO, but before I get into the updates pertaining to the technical charts, I want to provide a preface leading into this data that we see presented here. This pertains all to the utter chaos that transpired on October 10th with the most significant liquidity flush event in the entire history of the cryptocurrency space, far larger than the collapse of FTX, the crash of Luna, and going back to even the global distress that the COVID pandemic brought on back during around March of 2020. And this liquidation event, if we go to Galaxy and see exactly what they have said about it, which Galaxy is a global leader in digital assets and data center infrastructure, they yesterday, so October 13th, made a post summarizing and debriefing really what happened. I suppose at least this is their point of view, but this appears to, from everything else that I know as well, to be quite accurate and quite close enough at the very least to the truth of the scenario of what happened. And they are beginning this out by saying, obviously, what happened on Friday was one of the largest really, liquidation events in digital asset history, driven by a sudden global macro shock that set off a chain reaction of liquidations. They say, in short, resurgent threats of tariffs triggered a deep sell-off across most major cryptocurrencies, forcing an unwind of leverage that had been built up across other parts of the crypto market. Auto deleveraging on several major exchanges accelerated the sell-off, draining liquidity and deepening losses. A technical issue on one platform added to this strain. Altogether, they say this forced liquidations across the crypto market totaled to over 19 billion, somewhere around or over 1.6 million market participants affected, with obviously this mass string of total liquidations, people losing their entire portfolios. And they say here importantly that it was not a failure of underlying stablecoin systems or DeFi protocols, because for example there were stablecoin depeggings during all this chaos, but rather they say market-wide deleveraging event amplified by exchange side pricing risk and auto liquidations had a very principal role to play in all of this. And with that last thing that they mentioned there, bringing up the, obviously the number of centralized exchanges, you think about the biggest ones like Coinbase, Binance, Kraken, and the plenty of other ones that there are, KuCoin, so on and so forth. If you look into the percentage drawdowns on the charts of a lot of these assets, you'll see that across these distinct exchanges, they're just about all of them are showing different data. Some of them will have for X, Y, and Z coin only a 30 to 40% pull down. Then another exchange is showing a 50, 60, 70% or higher pull down. They're all showing, in a lot of cases, different data. If you look at something like SUI, showing up a chart here, it has had one of the worst degree of drawdowns. I believe one of the charts, it's somewhere around 90%, might be like 93%. There's another one, it's I think in the 80s and 70s, and there's also one in the 40s, I believe, or it might be the 30s. But again, it's just a testament. Even with Cardano, there's on some of the charts major wicks down that aren't shown by other charts. So it's very, again, it seems to be very illicit. There seems to have been something going on behind the stage curtains of the socio-political financial drama that we all participate in as people of the earth within our distributed societies and civilization. But when it comes to this chart here, or this table rather, of data, it is including the top 250 cryptocurrencies by market cap, excluding 5 coins because they are stable coins. And we'll see here a number of pages. There's 10 pages in total, 25 coins per page, where we start here at index 0. So the first coin, DEXE, or DXE, I'm not sure how to pronounce this. I've never even heard of this, but when it comes to the top 250, this is also using CoinGecko data as well. We can see the percent change of this was negative 49%. And then from here on down, so as we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so on and so forth, we'll see 49%, 47%, 44%. Generally, there is, and I'll bring it up here on the side, there is the categorization of ranges according to this calculation, which is from the opening of the October 10th candle to the opening of the October 11th candle, which means that this is not only factoring in and calculating the percentage drawdowns in total of the localized liquidation flush event, but it's also taking into account the degree of rebound and relief that these coins, these cryptocurrencies saw after the entire liquidation flush event occurred, leading into the opening of the October 11th candle. So when you go to these charts and you actually look at the drawdowns localized to the liquidation event itself, it'll be higher than these seen. So again, these pertain to the opening of October 10th daily candle to the opening of the October 11th candle. And like I said, there's going to be these various ranges here. You can see on the right, 50 to 40% pullbacks. Examples would be MYXDXE, IP, 40 to 30% pullbacks. You have Sonic, XBL Theta. Sonic was formerly known as FTM or Phantom, one that I've spoken about plenty of times on the channel because it performed very well in the 2020 to 2021 bull market. In the 30 to 20% range, taking the third spot of lesser intense pullbacks, we see Doge, Litecoin AVAX. 20 to 10%, here's we see XYO is the category it falls into, with Ethereum, XRP, and then with the 10 to 0% pullback zone, we see Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, and Tron or TRX. And we can see XYO actually falls here on the 7th page of 10, taking the 156th spot here, having a negative 11.78% change. For example, we go to here to page 8, we see Bitcoin at 180, having a negative 6.98. And like I said, if you actually measure these localized liquidity flush events on the chart, they will be higher than this, but nonetheless, this still is a proper and accurate testament to how well XYO held up. As I said, it takes that 4th position with the second to least most intense categorization of pullback during this liquidity flush event, and is overall a testament to the, I believe, resiliency and integrity of XYO as an asset. And when we're seeing things like SUI or even like Cardano having these anomalous wicks and more drastic in certain contexts and cases of analysis drawdowns in XYO, I think again it's just a good testament to the overall, just like I said, integrity and the validity that is backing XYO, not only as a token, but as an overall blockchain solution that's, I believe, a revolutionary paradigm within the entire set of blockchain solutions themselves. Now here, if we go to the first chart here, the Bitcoin dominance, total 3 and others Bitcoin chart here, that's going from top to bottom. We see here the Bitcoin dominance had an inverse printing of data as compared to what Bitcoin did and what the rest of the altcoins did, where we saw an anomalous vertical spike in the Bitcoin dominance only to fall right back down to where that spike began, whereas we saw the specific cryptocurrency assets themselves do the opposite of this, where they had the drastic spike down and then they've recovered about, some degree at this point, 40-50%. For example, Bitcoin's recovered about approximately half or so of the fall and the decline in the price during the liquidity flush event. And on top of that, we see here on the total 3 chart that obviously we see this major wick down. Altcoins clearly, as I've already demonstrated, were struggling, many of them very much so. And then let's look down here on others Bitcoin dominance. You again can further see just how drastic and how severe this event was due to the major wick that we see here. But as I've said, most of the pullback has been rebounded or recovered at this point by a relief back towards the upside. Now, if we go here to, before getting into the numerous XYO charts, we look here at XL1. Due to the launch of XYO Layer 1 at the end of quarter 3 of this year, 2025, we saw the dual token model finally come into full launch in effect. Here we see XL1. Now, there's plenty of chart pairings for XL1. They all display different data. This is the using the crypto chart, which typically in most cases provides the most temporal data. Doesn't carry any volume data, which is unfortunate because of the vector candle indicator that I use. But this chart, for example, here shows that it wicked all the way up to, at the beginning, to roughly 1/3 of a penny. So there's one other chart that shows it going up to as high as 4 cents. And then the others are somewhere in between 1/3 of a penny and 4 cents. So again, like I said, this is really, there's so many different pairings and so many different data points printed in terms of the price that it's hard to tell exactly what it looks like. It's also clearly a very, it's in its infancy as a token, so the data at this point is going to be quite obscure and scant. There's just not too much of it. But overall, if you factor out this major volatility here in the beginning, you can see here that XL1's been in a steady downtrend and decline since launch, continuing to set these lower lows here upon the resistance here of the resistance zone and dotted black lines, where we can see that recently going into this liquidity flush event, the yellow zone here was tested where we set these initial lows back at the earliest stages of XL1 trading. So as I've been saying, we're seeing a lot of rebounding already, and a notable rebounding and relief after this liquidity flush event. Here we can see that XL1's up about from low to local high here, around 16%. It is hitting the lowermost bound of the resistance zone in black here, and it is finding appropriately so, I believe, some resistance. I think this is going to be this obviously it's a significant resistance at this point. It characterizes the vast majority of the entire trading history of XL1. So getting above this, which at its highest is going to be 0.0009, basically, this is approximating 1/10 of a penny. And once it gets back above this, it could potentially see the movement. Likely would see some movement up to around 1/10 of a penny. So lining up with what this horizontal range would be posing here in terms of resistance. Then there's going to be this horizontal zone here somewhere around just barely above 1/10 of a penny. And then anything after that could then spike. We could see potentially a pretty notable move of volatility towards the upside, especially if over the coming months and weeks we see Bitcoin initiate a move upwards towards 150,000 and higher. Obviously, then we'll see Ethereum, Cardano, XYO, plenty of these other altcoins that are going to prosper going into what I believe to be the final most explosive move of the current bull run, because I don't lean to or stand within the camp that thinks that the bull run's over. So in light of all of that, I would have to imagine, which is I'll get to the chart that shows the interrelationships between Bitcoin and all other cryptocurrencies and the temporal trend that is characterizing the entire bull run thus far, where we see a superimposition of Bitcoin's temporal trend upon the altcoins, and they're just following Bitcoin in time, a very elegant ebb and flow. I'd have to imagine here that we'll see XL1 spike up quite nicely in price as well. It's also insanely cheap, so that's also going to be another reason for a potential, a very sizable percentage gain towards the upside, if only it actually does not continue to sustain this downtrend here. But outside of that, the current low is sitting somewhere around 0.0008. Continuing to go below that and lower, likely would then enter an even more notable macro downtrend, where we'll then see a low set below here, and we'll kind of just see a general downtrend channel, something along these lines. But moving here into XY on the 4-hour chart, we can see really three, but the first two to mention here, these more shorter term resistances here, they're going to be important to get above, which this lowermost one here is finding confluence with the 50 EMA in the band. So anywhere around 0.0085, moving up to here is going to be somewhere around, to round it up, 0.009. Also coming into play with the 200 EMA sitting somewhere around 0.009. So this is all basically just approximating a penny, whereas then we move up here to this local low was sitting right at a penny, a tad bit above a penny, but basically a penny, where the 800 EMA here sits also right at a penny. And then if we see here zooming out, there's this longer term resistance in blue, the uppermost resistance here going all the way back to the candle close peak of April 25th of this year. This is lining up really synonymously with the 800 EMA, again just pointing to a penny. So this is the uppermost descending resistance for XYO to get it back above. It's also a nice psychological value of just basically a whole penny. And even more so above that, as I've been pointing out for weeks, probably months at this point, in each of the update videos for XYO, this purple zone here at approximately 2 cents, pushing to 2.2 cents, is going to be the second to last crucial zone to get back above, whereas the one above that would be more crucial would just be getting back above the prior all-time highs up here, somewhere just around the candle closes of here, which would be anywhere from around, it's basically 4 cents, so just approximately 4 cents, give or take, like half a penny or so. And if you zoom out even further on the 4-hour chart, you can see here this yellow horizontal zone Going back to currently, as I'll show, November 19th of 2024, where we can see that leading into the move up to 4.5 cents, we saw this symmetrical triangle where we saw this convergent pressure of the price action, then bounce here at the 50 EMA all the way up to 4.5 cents. So once you fast forward a little bit later here during the low, or the downtrend initiated after reaching 4.5 cents, we see here from March 10th to April 7th. Again, we see this zone met. We saw it met the upper bound at least here back in around June, July of 2025. And then you can see here this liquidity flush event, or this liquidation flush event, a movement back into this horizontal support zone. If we go back even further, we can see how important this zone was back towards the end of the most recent bear market for XYO, where you can see that after this main kind of ABCD-like pattern is moved to the downside, that characterizes and encompasses the majority of the bear run that we are currently looking at. You can see that this led into kind of like an oscillation here around this zone, and then eventually it lost it. Came down and set the first low of the bear market here back in January of 2023. Instantly, in a vertical fashion, moved right back up to this yellow zone and found rejection, moving into here this low, final low of the bear market back in around September, October 2023. We then select, so I move up here to around a penny or so, approximately, find rejection, then we select, so I move above it, and here as we continue to see XYO lost it again here, moved back above it, or moved to this zone here as I went back over here in November of 2024. Then we saw the price shoot up to 4.5 cents, and ever since then, this zone has acted as horizontal support going all the way back to November of 2024. And even if we zoom in just to see how low and how oversold the RSI got recently with this liquidity flush event, the RSI moved all the way down to 21. This would be comparable to, for example, these two lows set back here. It'd be comparable to the low set here right before the move to 4.5 cents. Comparable to the lows set here as well. And it's kind of generally the same, even going back to the actual low of the bear market back here, here as well, and even here. Now, there's really two scenarios. Either, assuming that this chaos is over with and Bitcoin's going to find a bounce into further price discovery, we'd likely to see XYO find support generally within this yellow range that I pointed out to higher prices, ultimately actually into its price discovery of its own during the anticipated parabolic portion of alt season that everybody has been eagerly waiting for. And like I mentioned here, for example, we saw this lower low in the price, but the RSI was ascending with that bullish divergence. So that definitely could happen even if the chaos is over with these liquidity or with these liquidation events and these insiders manipulating the market and whatever, specifically might be going on behind the curtains. We could potentially see the RSI build up here with an ascending support structure, and we see the price continue to trickle a little bit lower, perhaps down to closer to approximately 0.007, maybe even wicking a bit below 0.007, where we see again the price structure of support is descending and the RSI structure of support is ascending, pointing out a bullish divergence that could be seen as relative to what happened back here. Afterwards, we then saw the price move from around 0.074 all the way up to around 2.1 cents, a total move of around 192, basically 200%. We look here at the weekly chart. We can see here that the the ascending support zone here that's characterized the current bear market to bull market transitional period, what I've labeled here as just kind of the expansion phase leading into the parabolic portion of an altcoin, generally alt season, where we see the price then shoot back up to prior all-time highs, for example here at around 8 cents, and then continue higher above this into parabolic price discovery. Now, one of the things I've mentioned recently here with posts, whether it be on the channel or on X, is that it needs to be noted by anybody that has been investing in and is holding XYO that the fact that its price has gone down over the last number of days is not because XYO is failing as a blockchain solution or as a token asset. It's simply just because of what unfortunately transpired, and it has really nothing to do with XYO. And even more over on top of that, like I was going over earlier with that data table, XYO has held up very well comparatively to a lot of the other altcoins, specifically those within the top 250, while XYO is not even in that top 250. So we still see the most crucial ascending support zone intact for the bull run. It was support back for this low of the really kind of the beginning here of this accumulation zone of XYO, the earliest portion of the accumulation zone of XYO, leading into the low of September 2023. And ever since then, you can see we see these spikes and impulses in price, only for it to come back down. And if XYO continues to go lower to meet the bottom bounded trend line of this zone, it will be somewhere, like I said, approximating 007, potentially with wicks a tad bit lower, potentially maybe like 0067 or something along those lines. On top of that, again, we still have the ascending resistance zone here, which further corroborates some zone around prior all-time highs around 8 cents, all the way up to somewhere around 20, 21, 22 cents, potentially with the ability for wicks upwards towards 30 cents, just because, as I've demonstrated and said plenty of times, XYO is a very wicky asset. You can see how wicky it is just by these two wicks here, for example, and even going like back here or right here. It's a very wicky asset, so we might see the candles move up and close somewhere approximately 18, 19, 20 cents, and we might see a couple wicks or so that wick close to like 27, 28, upwards towards 30 cents during this first zone here. Outside of that, we see this descending resistance here that's going to line up also, again, further finding a confluence and a convergence upon the importance of approximately 2 cents, somewhere around 2.2 cents to 2.1 cents, 2.2 cents is going to be, again, very crucial to get above, because it's the descending resistance here that needs to be broken. And on this chart here, like I said, on the 4-hour, and this goes up to the daily as well, this 2 cent zone here, horizontally speaking, of pertaining to this downtrend that XYO has been in, is pointing to that same zone. If we look here at the RSI, you can see that it's currently sitting at 41. It's not insanely oversold just yet, but it is more oversold now than when the price was sitting here back at around half a penny. So we're seeing an ascending structure currently right now in the most up-to-date data, an ascending support structure, whereas the RSI here is descending through that entire time period. So we're seeing some hidden bullish divergence shaping up there. And if, let's say, XYO comes down to the bottom of this channel here, and we see the RSI move back down to in line with this low in the RSI right here, or maybe even lower, we'll continue to see that further emphasized hidden bullish divergence. If you look here at the stock RSI, there's also some bullish divergence potentially shaping up to execute here as well. Same thing on the MACD as well, as it's just nudging its head upon the 0 point, and when this gets flipped, we'll see that momentum burst, that bubble burst, and we'll see a lot of this volatility that's been built up released here towards the upside. Best case scenario too, this green zone here, potentially even higher. And then the same thing can be said for the RVI. It's been in a state of, there's a more clear bullish divergence here going from the low of March 10th of 2025 to currently, with the, like I said, the price structure supports descending, RVI here is ascending. Best case scenario, we see this RVI move up here into this upper bounded top half zone to indicate a sentiment of bullish volatility and price appreciation towards the upside over the coming months. We look here at this weekly chart. I have placed an inside pitchfork drawn from the candle low, body low of March 16th of 2020 to around August 17th of 2020 for the candle high of the body, and so for January 11th for this respective low, where we see the inside pitchfork properly drawn from a low to high low, or inversely a high low to high. And this creates a literally the bare bottom, as low as you could get, uptrend ascending structure of support for XYO, where we can see going all the way back to September of 2023. Really, it's September, October 2023. Then you fast forward here to September, October 2024. Then you fast forward to where we are now, September, October 2025. We see here that from 2023 to 2024 to 2025, a year apart each. So during the 2-month span of September to October of these respective years, the 786 has been hit here and has acted as crucial support. More broadly, it's the range here of the 786 to the 618 in pink and turquoise. So ideally, this is going to hold up here, and we'll find a bounce here that historically or affirms this historically attested to temporal and also structural uptrend pattern of support that factors in Fibonacci levels as well. Now, if we see perhaps move down to the 0.5, it's somewhere, I believe that's the point, that might just be the, so that's the 0.5 here, would be somewhere around half a penny. The 382 is somewhere around 4.5, or not, 4.5, well, basically just half a penny as well, so closer to 0.45, or my bad, 0.045, and then down to the 236, somewhere around 0.036, and at the very bottom of this inside pitchfork, which is going to be corresponding to the, like I said, this is the lowermost ascending uptrend structure of XYO that is foreign from drawing the trend line from the literal lowest low of XYO in March 2020 to this double bottom here, where we see this double bottom that led into the bull run of the only bull run, the first bull run, full and completed bull run that is of XYO. So if we see a return back to the very bottom of this uptrend structure, then it would come back down to around approximately 1/3 of a penny, which would be somewhere a bit below the actual bear market low of most recent, where you can see here that if it meets the bottom of this somewhere by January of next year, then we would see a retest of the horizontal lows of the prior bear market for XYO. Now, that is a possibility. I don't think it is the more likely than not or most likely possibility, but nonetheless, at the end of the day, to try to entertain as much as I can and not to come across as dogmatically bullish or irrationally bullish, and the same for being dogmatically or irrationally bearish. Clearly, there's obviously, you know, anything can happen, especially with seeing the liquidity flush event of October 10th. Who knows what's going to happen over the coming months and how chaotic it might get. But with all things considered, the plethora of bullish structures intact for Bitcoin, as I demonstrated in the video prior to this one. To me personally, my leaning of belief, which is not an absolute stance and is a tentative belief, is that we will continue to see Bitcoin go up, and we will also see that reflect within the alternative cryptocurrencies such as Ethereum, Cardano, XYO, so on and so forth. You can also see here, zooming in on this weekly candle close resistance here, this lower bounded one here, that the wick of the liquidity flush event came right back down to that, just a tad bit above it. So far, that's holding up. The resistance here, the candle wicks, is still intact. Getting above that will just be somewhere around 9.3 cents, so just, you know, a tad bit below, not too much below, approximately 1 penny. I mean, really, it's all kind of summing up to psychological values here, where we're seeing approximately a penny, need to get above that, and then approximately 2 pennies, need to get above that, and then afterwards pushing up to 3 cents, and then 4.5 cents and higher is going to be those varying stages of milestones to be met for resistance breaking in the price structure of XYO to see further movement towards prior all-time highs at around 8 cents and into actual genuine parabolic price discovery to 10, 12, 13, 20 cents, 30 cents, and maybe even upwards to $1 or higher, as I have entertained on this channel, which leads me to this chart here, the 2 weekly. We see the all-time inside pitchfork channel here, drawn from the high back at the inception of price trading to the wick low here, all the way to the wick high of October 2021 at the end of the 2020 to 21 bull market. So this is going to be one drawn from high, low to high, and we can see here that again we're seeing the 786 here to 618 zone being quite important. Obviously, the candles currently zooming in here are a bit below the 786, encroaching upon the bottom of this macro historical uptrend, which points to somewhere around 0.006. So it's roughly in line with the here this inside pitchfork used on this chart, and also the just a tad bit going a little bit below this zone here on the weekly. And they're also on top of that, we can potentially see here a descending wedge being formed, which is going to be a bullish reversal pattern. So far, the liquidity flush wicked below it, as you can see, but then it recovered enough to get back within and above and on top of the descending support here with the current candle nicely opening above that. So best case scenario, what we'll see here is this kind of descending triple bottom here that forms a bullish falling wedge. We'll see the price then jump back up here and to continue to go higher and higher, reaching the prior all-time highs and actually into genuine price discovery. Look here at the RSI with the historical inside pitchfork. You can see that there is a minor deviation so far below the lowermost support. I don't think this is cause for concern. Again, it needs to be brought to light here the fact that this decrease in XYO's price and this deviation we're seeing, which again is still very minor of this uptrend here, this inside pitchfork used on the RSI, it's only because of a liquidity event that had nothing specifically to do with XYO and affected the entire cryptocurrency market and even affected the fiat market, such as like the S&P and the indices associated with the traditional markets. The stock RSI here, again, you can see it's just within this general zone here of stock RSI lows that have characterized the lows of the bear market low range, the accumulation zone here, and then leading into the expansion phase as XYO continue to set lows as it is grinding gradually upwards in its expansion phase, leading into the projected and anticipated parabolic price discovery phase. We can see here that the MACD here is oversold. It's more oversold than back in September, October of 2024, and it's also lower than it was back in August, leading into September, October 2023, when it wasn't even flipped bearish at that point. Yet we can see here on the price that it's higher than it has been comparative to each of these two instances in the past. So again, what we're seeing here on the MACD is this kind of megaphone-like structure where the ascending resistance is more pronounced than this slight descending resistance here. But overall, I think what we're kind of seeing here is this kind of buildup of price where we're seeing further, like with this first move here, and then the second move here is bigger than the first, and the third move here is going to be bigger than those first two due to this momentum and this price pressure being built up. If you look here at the RVI, again, we will see there's been potentially a bullish divergence forming from June to now, where we're seeing obviously here that the price has been descending along the support to the falling wedge. The RVI has been currently could end up solidifying that bullish divergence, marking a potential move up to the upper half of the RVI to signal, for example, what happened back here during the prior bull run where we saw this parabolic price discovery period. And then lastly here with the ASO, similar to what's going on with the RSI, and kind of really what the RSI leads to in conclusion of technical analysis is synonymous with what this here is saying as well. We're seeing the deviation of the ASO converging symmetrical triangles here. And again, like I said, this is primarily due to the Black Swan liquidity flush event, and is not just solely because of the fact that XYO is struggling and it's not actually going to enter into a parabolic period. It's not saying that it's not going to potentially retest prior all-time highs and actually enter into price discovery, and this could very well be a fake out. I mean, if this is if you're looking here at this as in a symmetrical convergent triangle, a lot of the times these patterns have fake outs, and the fake out is the opposite of what the actual breakout is supposed to be. So in this case, we're seeing a fake out here that has a bearish sentiment conveyed, which will then imply that the follow through this is that we're going to see the bullish sentiment line here, which is this white line right here, move back up towards the upside and break out towards the upside like it did back here, leading into the parabolic price discovery portion of the prior bull market iteration of XYO. And here in this last chart, as I alluded to earlier, we see the comparison going from top to bottom, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, and XYO. I've gone over this plenty of times. So what this chart is simply just conveying here with these color coordinated zones going from red to purple to turquoise, pink, periwinkle, yellow, blue, green. It's denoting the cross-coin temporal pattern going back to the lows, for example, here for Bitcoin 2018, Ethereum, Cardano, and then XYO for leading from the red period to this turquoise period here. There was a deviation Like, for example, you can see here in the purple period, all 4 of the coins were making lows, but Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Cardano were already making their second final low of the bear market, that accumulation zone here, as you can see, as it led into this expansion phase into the highs for all 3 of these coins, Ethereum all the way up to Bitcoin. And then really, XYO was quite a laggard of a coin during the last bull run, where we can see that by the time here in this turquoise period, you see Cardano, Ethereum, Bitcoin, they're basically, Bitcoin, they're already all topped out for all intents and purposes. They don't have many more gains to make, whereas XYO is literally just beginning its bull run and still went up quite significantly into the beginning of the hot pink period, at the time of which Cardano, Ethereum, and Bitcoin are all just going sideways in a distribution zone leading into that upcoming bear market, which is began here by the pink period leading into the periwinkle period here, which for Bitcoin and Ethereum, it was an accumulation zone. It really kind of was. It was for Cardano and XYO as well, but it was still kind of downtrending to a degree. And then leading here into the current bull run, we see with each of these yellow zones here, the initial pump of the bull run, the first leg of the overall 5-stage impulse structure that I've overlaid on top of Bitcoin. And it seems to be carried out through these altcoins. And we see here in blue the second leg of each of these coins. And here in green is the third and final leg of each of these coins, which have been the most deviant from past history of the current isolated bull run thus far. And again, what's interesting about this is the fact that we can see here going to the blue period for Bitcoin down to Ethereum, Cardano, and XYO, that each of these began here in September, October 2023. Then fast forward to September, October 2024. That was the beginning of this move, and now we're September, October 2025. Again, it's generally just Q4, which is typically going to be the most bullish period of time in the yearly progression of Bitcoin and altcoins as well. So, I mean, history here, the precedent is being set that, according to So, we'll see here Bitcoin take off to the upside, Ethereum, Cardano, and XYO, and other altcoins as well. But obviously, this is merely a tentative position based upon the current state of Bitcoin here and the altcoins as well. But like I said, this all hinges upon Bitcoin, because if we here looking at Bitcoin, my bottom line, my line in the sand here is this horizontal support here at approximately $78,000, $80,000 or so. If we see Bitcoin actually, if it's forming an ascending double top or M pattern here, and we see the price retest this horizontal zone of approximately $80,000, lose it with weekly and daily candles and opens below So, and then we see the price come back up to this horizontal zone, find resistance and continue lower, and then especially even more so go below this horizontal support of around 55,000, then at that point, I think it's quite clear that the bear run has already began and that the bull market actually ended here at the what would be, in this case, the all-time high of approximately $126.5 thousand. But until this happens, I am expecting that we will continue to see the temporal progression here across each of these coins in this market-wide temporal pattern that we are seeing, which gives some final hope for Bitcoin presenting a bull market that's not as lackluster as it currently is for the altcoin space, specifically Ethereum, Cardano, and XYO, to actually enter into the parabolic price discovery portion of alt season and actually carry out a proper alt season as well. It's still around the corner at some point in time, whether or not it's sometime in Q4 of this year or maybe even going into Q1 of next year. It doesn't really matter, but in all, seriousness and in all ability to remain impartial and just try to objectively interpret the data and try to, parse out where exactly the meter is leaning, whether it's, leaning bullish in the next few months or leaning bearish in the next few months, whether the bull market still has one major thrust up, and that means alt season is going to enter parabolic price discovery, or whether or not there is currently a bull market ending and a bear market beginning, where we're going to see basically no altcoin enter price discovery for the most part. But all of that being said, as always, none of this is meant to be financial advice. Now I'm going to move in here to a last portion of the video pertaining to, here I'll zoom in on the price chart of XYO. I briefly mentioned this in a post before I uploaded this video and have been debating internally whether or not I even want to speak about it. But one of the things coming along with the introduction of XYO Layer 1 would be the symbiotic dual token model. And with that, we see the introduction of XL1. One of the reservations I was making before XYO Layer 1 was launched officially during September of this year was the fact that I did not want to see XL1 listed as a acquirable or a token which you can acquire by buying it on a centralized exchange. If it was able to be swapped via a DEX, a decentralized exchange, then I particularly wasn't and still am not really fond of that. But if so, then that's not really that big of a deal. My biggest concern was the fact that it was going to be listed on centralized exchanges as a viable token, and the fact that that will pull away from the liquidity aimed towards XYO and the interest and value placed upon XYO as the original token or asset associated with XYO Labs and their venture into DPIN and the broader RWA sector associated with like logistics, telecommunications, the healthcare, medical industry, even things like the nascent innovation and introduction of like smart cities or like smart agriculture or smart whatever it may be. And so with the drop of XL1, it did indeed end up becoming a viable token through a various number of exchanges, Kraken, KuCoin, plenty of CEXs, and then Uniswap is a single DEX that it's available on. And obviously there's the Genesis era of staking, system staking that is, on XYO L1 or XYO Layer 1. That is purported to, there's this boosted XL1 reward pool, and it's supposed to, the people that stake in this Genesis era as early as they can at the largest amount that they can will reap disproportionately higher amounts of XL1 comparatively to post-Genesis staking rewards. But at this point, as I've been updating it on my X account and cataloging and providing charts for the progression of the cumulative stake data of XYO and XYO-L1, showing its velocity, its acceleration, and its or negative acceleration events. It's been very lackluster. There was, claimed by people that are associated with representatives XYO, there would be a significant amount locked up. I took that with a grain of salt. I never really expected a significant amount to be locked up. And so far that is the case. It's not even reached 300 million yet, and the total supply of XYO is approximately 13.9 billion. It's struggling to even reach, approximately 1/3 of a billion. It's struggling to reach half a billion, and clearly it's not even going to be getting anywhere near within the Genesis era to at least a billion, just at least around 1/13 or 1/14 of the overall total supply of XYO. Now I'm going to bring up an image here that is showing a post for Kraken on October 13th, so yesterday at the time of recording this video, speaking about an XL1 airdrop for Kraken users to the degree of giving out $100,000 worth of XL1, where you have to do these steps. For example, you have to subscribe to Kraken Plus, which is like $4.99 a month. And then you have to then trade or hold 150,000 XL1. And then this enters you into the just eligibility for the airdrop. Now, the point here is that I'm making is that there doesn't seem to be much of an interest aimed towards, obviously we're seeing an airdrop here. Why hasn't there been an airdrop specifically by XYO or XY Labs and the people that are backing the team as the developers? Why isn't there an airdrop that's specifically catered towards giving long-term holders of XYO XL1? Instead, it seems to be driven by monetary gain by the company behind XYO that's clearly having to sell these tokens for profit to the exchanges which are doing these airdrops and are selling the tokens. Now, clearly, in past videos, I've brought up concerns for the continuing of XYO Labs as the company behind XYO. If you look at their audit documents, it goes all the way back to the semi-annual audit of 2017. There has been a going concern and a significant or substantial doubt section pertaining to the ability of XY Labs to continue as a business and as a company backing a blockchain solution because they are incurring significant net losses. But yet, even though that's occurred in every audit since the semi-annual audit of 2017 for going on 7-8 years at this point, they're continuing to display resilience. They're continuing to develop, and now they've launched their own XYO Layer 1. I'm not one of the people that thinks that they are a inevitably struggling and ultimately at some point in time dying company that at this point is just trying to grift off of their original investors and adopters so they can suck as much capital out as a community in a malicious and nefarious way as possible. I do not think that that is the most likely contextual, synopsis here of what I'm talking about, but I do have to say that I am, as we're getting further and further into the launch of XYO Layer 1, is becoming increasingly perturbed and, kind of disappointed and unsettled by the way that the release of XL1 is being handled. And I don't say this from a vantage point of I feel as a multi-year long XYO investor, adopter, and holder that I feel entitled to getting an XL1 airdrop just because of that. That's not the frame of reference which I am saying this from. It's coming from an objectively based frame of reference just pertaining to kind of the principle of ethics underlying the fact that XL1 was listed as a viable token through centralized exchanges, and there's airdrops being done that aren't kind of showing an emphasis on giving coins to early investors, adopters of XYO outside of the Genesis staking era, which as in on posts on X with conversing with people in the community, I brought up the point that I will not be shocked or surprised at all if months after post-Genesis era that the rewards reaped during Genesis system staking aren't actually all that notably and significantly disproportionate to post-Genesis rewards of XL1. Now, obviously, only time will show and tell just exactly how that's going to play out, but I don't particularly have the best hunch. I still think that, with me being rather negative here and kind of giving some critiques and casting some shadows and on the token and kind of the team behind it, which I'm not saying anything negative about the people behind it, but more so about just the way that it's being carried in terms of kind of, to me, the kind of principalities and like the ethics underlying the rolling out of XL1, despite the fact that I think XYO Layer 1 and its dual token model is a symbiotic system. It was necessary on both a fundamental and technical level. As I said, I don't think that XYO and the company behind XYO Labs is grifting and just trying to suck as much capital out of their community as they can before they inevitably implode because there's a failing business. I cannot make that clearer. I don't think that is the case. I haven't really been given any reason from all the information, videos, and or whatever, all the information that I've taken in of the CEO, think like Ari Tro, Marcus Levin, other representatives. They all seem like people that are oriented towards the good. They don't seem like a bunch of people that are just trying to scam people. That does not seem to be the case for me. But I really just kind of hesitantly, debatedly so, here literally right as I was about to end the video and not talk about any of this because it's not. I don't feel like this is a big thing. I don't feel like this means that the price of XYO is going to drastically decline, nor do I think that us as XYO investors and adopters are going to get rug pulled. But I did choose to go over it just because I feel like this is something that should be brought up, because I do feel like that there is more of an emphasis on the distribution of XL1 placed upon garnering profit out of it than should be, which I understand it to some degree because XY Labs backing XYO as a blockchain solution. At the end of the day, they are a business, and I totally get business needs capital. They need inflow of monetary value so that they can continue to do what they're doing. So I'm not fully sitting here just berating them. I'm not saying anything negative about the people behind XYO and the developer team, social media managers, anybody that's associated with it. But at the end of the day, I am speaking about the way that XL1 and its distribution and rollout is being handled, and my reservations with that as a multi-year investor and adopter of XYO. And here the last thing that I want to make a note on when it comes to the context surrounding XL1 and the airdrops seeming to be more oriented towards profit making rather than rewarding a community that's been long-standing with XYO for the long-term holders and adopters, such as having some sort of ratio for if you have, as a long-term holder of XYO, if you have this amount or multiples of this amount of XYO, you get this amount of XL1 for the airdrop. So this comes down to the final point relative to staking. So the main way to earn XL1, if you're not going to go out there and buy it, which again is something that I'm against, is to stake, whether that's node staking or system staking. As of now, system staking is the only option pertaining to the current Genesis era, which is almost over. It ends, they said, sometime Thursday, probably closer to early morning Thursday if I had to take a guess. So it's almost over. Lackluster so far. Nowhere near a, kind of a objective sort of provide some sort of consensus around what a significant amount of XYO staked is. Definitely, I would say that it's not gotten there by any means. So the system staking allows people to earn XL1 by staking their XYO. So in tandem with these airdrops to people that may or may not be hearing about XYO and XL1 for the first time, pertaining to people that are using the exchanges that sell XL1, again, maybe they've never heard about XYO Layer 1 at all, and now they're just all of a sudden buying a large amount of XL1. And meanwhile, the people that have been accumulating XYO for years at this point, obviously they could go out and buy it themselves, but they've been accumulating XYO, so why? At least this is kind of the viewpoint that I took whenever this all started coming to surface with the new token and whatnot, which it's not something that I'm against, but my initial reaction to this was I have little to no interest in XL1 outside of the fact that it's necessary for protocol functionality as a utility token, and clearly that would be a reason why I do value it in that sense, but outside of that, I have no value in it, and I have no desire to go out really and buy it or really stake a lot of XYO to earn it, because I've been accumulating, like many other people in the community, have been accumulating XYO for the main goal, having the prerogative of selling it for profit at some point in time, ideally within a period of price discovery that's anywhere above around 8 to 10 cents. So again, the point is why would I or anybody else in my shoes, a multi-year investor, or anybody that just takes the viewpoint I'm taking, why do I want to lock up a significant portion of the asset XYO that I've been accumulating for years at this point to earn the token that I don't place any actual value in the sense of the point of why you're trading the market and investing in the market in the first place is in order to make money and make profit. It's just a utility token that allows you to perform the mechanisms, the functionalities of the blockchain and the various forms that's presented on XYO Layer 1. And again, like I said, that's all great and everything, and I plan on in the future, unless something happens or information comes out and I just want to decide to part my ways with this blockchain solution, plan on using it in the future to participate in the ecosystem. But as of right now, again, I don't see why it makes sense for XYO to introduce XL1 as a buyable token and then ask their long-term holders to stake up significant portions of their XYO in order to earn XL1. And while your XYO is staked up and locked up during that period of time that you have it, it might make a significant jump in price, or the significant price jump happens and then you go to withdraw your XYO and there's a 30-day cooldown period, meaning that after those 30 days of cooldown, that's when you then can actually get your XYO back and then actually sell it. And by the time that's happened, that price spike that's happened in the price of XYO it's already hit its peak and it's already down 50%, and you just lost out on profit you were eager for and waiting for an XYO for years because you decided to stake a significant portion of your XYO to earn XL1 because you didn't want to buy it because you've been buying XYO for all these years, and nor did you get any form of airdrop that was catered towards long-term multi-year investors and adopters of XYO. But this is now the end of the video. Again, like I said earlier, none of this is meant to be financial advice. Come to your own conclusions based upon the information that you intake, and if that includes mine, then great, but please, by all means, do not make a decision or take up a point of view simply just because I talked about it and you see me as some sort of influential authority. That is not my motive for this channel. But all that being said, I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.